South Africa's top court has ruled that former president, now opposition challenger Jacob Zuma, is ineligible to stand for parliament in next week's general election due to his previous conviction. This is a big development ahead of the May 29 poll, already the most competitive since the advent of post-apartheid democracy in 1994. The top court threw out Zuma's complaint against an electoral commission decision that a previous conviction for contempt prevents him from becoming an MP, ruling that the Constitution bars anyone sentenced to more than 12 months in jail. Zuma, who left office in 2018 after corruption allegations, was convicted of contempt of court during a case in 2021 and sentenced to 15 months. He eventually served less than 3 months in jail, but the court ruled this remission is irrelevant. The judgment by Justice Leona Taron read, "This court concludes that Mr. Zuma was convicted of an offence and sentenced to more than 12 months imprisonment and is accordingly not eligible to be a member of and not qualified to stand for election to the National Assembly." We now cross over to Zim Papers Group political editor Ranga Mataire to discuss this and other developments in the build-up to South African elections. Good evening, Ranga. Now, Zuma's candidature brought a new twist to South Africa's election. What does this ruling mean ahead of these polls?
I think the ruling is likely to have some form of impact on the former president's support base. Obviously, there will be disillusionment from his support base, assuming that the former president is not going to appeal against the ruling. If he's not going to appeal against the ruling, yes, there will be some form of impact. However, the fact that the former president is going to remain on the ballot paper might also indicate that there will be very minimum impact. His face will still be there as the leader of the Umkhonto weSizwe. So his support base, the supporters of Umkhonto weSizwe will still be able to visualize their leader on the ballot paper. So the impact will be very minimum in terms of his support base. However, you might have a recollection about what happened in the past when Mr. Zuma was convicted. There was a lot of riots, violence that took place, and close to almost 300 people lost their lives in that violence. I don't think we can anticipate similar things to happen, but yes, there will be disillusionments within the Umkhonto weSizwe support base.
Right. Now, analysts have already concluded that this is one of the most competitive elections post-apartheid in South Africa. Is it the same without Zuma?
On whether the elections is going to be the same without Zuma, I don't think it would have the same impact if the former president had been allowed had not been disqualified. However, the fact that it remains competitive, it's not just about Zuma, although Zuma, if you want to be objective, is a product of ANC, is an ANC cadre. So definitely Zuma's support base was going to eat into the support base of the ruling African National Congress. It's going to be competitive not just because of Zuma, but also because of the forces surrounding ANC. You recall about the International Court of Justice lawsuit which was lodged by the ruling ANC government against Israel for its conflict in Palestine. There are others who were not happy because of that. You also recall other incidences that tended to give a negative perception of the South African government when the Ukraine-Russia war started, when there were reports that the South African government might be supplying weapons to Russia, which was later proven wrong. The same forces that were fighting Zimbabwe, that were against Zimbabwe during its election, we see the same forces also, coming out in the South African elections. You also recall that the opposition, one of the main opposition political parties, the DA, He has appealed and written a letter to the United States to almost ostensibly inviting the United States to come and have a say in the elections, accusing the ruling party of one thing or another. So the same forces that ZANU-PF as a former liberation movement was facing in Zimbabwe during its election, we see the same forces also manifesting in South Africa. So it will be a very competitive elections, yes, but from the look of it, I think it will just be a weakening of support base, but the ANC will still triumph in this election. It will still be able to govern again.
Right, and now my last question to you is, how important are free and fair elections in South Africa to Zimbabwe and the rest of the region?
Free and fair elections are very critical for the sustenance of democracy, not just in South Africa, but in Zimbabwe. You be aware that there are guidelines and principles governing the holding of democratic elections in the region. And South Africa is party to those statutes and guidelines, regional guidelines, just like Zimbabwe. So yes, it's very critical because it then shows that the region is matured in terms of holding democratic elections. It is also critical because we'll be able to send, South Africa will be able to send a clear message globally and internationally that it is able to hold free and fair elections just like in any other part of the world. Yes, challenges will always be existing, but this is very critical in fostering a democratic culture within the region. So yes, it's very, very important. So far, we have seen that there is nothing to write home in terms of any discrepancies. So hopefully the elections will go on smoothly, just like what happened in Zimbabwe. So just to go back to your question, yes, I think it is very critical that this election is held in a very free, peaceful environment so that it sends a clear message that the region and Africa is matured in terms of practicing a democracy, in terms of holding elections where the electorate can freely choose their leaders.
Konapo, ipapo pa ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294, the place to be.